Three,
Oh,
2, 1.
all right. Welcome everyone to this week's Stopping the Violence, February 4th, 2026. So grateful to have you every week. And we've had an incredible slew of people who have come on to share their strengths, their hopes, how they've worked with prevention post um, uh, projects that has helped reduce violence and the root causes of violence in their particular areas, in their particular communities, and their particular homes. We're just grateful that we have been able to continue and to have met such incredible people. With this week, we had this gentleman, Dr. Blee, on last week, and we just wanted to do share his recording again because he shared some significant points that I thought that we can. It warrants to relook at and warrants a more succinct discussion. So, without any further ado, we're going to have Dr. Blee. And last week's the topic that he shared with us was guns, gangs, and Jesus: how to heal a community rather than symptom management. It's really a mouthful. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming on, and those who are in the YouTube audience. God bless you. Welcome. Again, my name is Reverend Zachary Oliver, and I am your host every week. So without any further ado, let us.
Their families. Without any further ado, we love the topic. We're anxious to hear what you and also you're introduce your partner, your sidekick, or is as well to our platform. Welcome to our platform, Dr. Blee.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Reverend Oliver. And I have to give a shout out to VJ, who's on here too. He's part of my story. VJ, this meeting today is some 13, 12 years in the making for he and I to come back together. So I'll talk about that. And I have a dual screen here. Dr. Troy is with me. And Dr. Troy is a functional medicine neurologist. And you talked, Reverend Oliver, about root cause. His whole world of medicine is root cause. What's happening? How do you get to it? And I am the yin to his yang, because in my surgical practice, I am the disaster zone anatomist. Anybody walking into my building has a terrible problem. And so for the two of us to show up, it's been a step in this journey of there's a root cause issue, but there's acute situations. And so I think maybe what I'll do is I'll try to give a little bit about where I'm at now. I'll give a 5-10 minutes about the journey, maybe a couple of the lessons we've learned, and then let Dr. Troy fill in some of that blank. And then you guys can go with questions if that's okay.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so geographically, we are in Minnesota right now. We're in Eagan, south of Minneapolis. My surgical practice is in St. Paul, so East Metro. My trauma center, we are a level 1 trauma center, so we take everything. If you make up an injury, we've seen it, so we take it all. We this year became the busiest level 1 trauma center in the United States of America. So there are about 600 level 1 or 2 trauma centers. If you look at our numbers, the highest or the sickest of the sick people, that's an activation, a trauma activation. A 12-member team comes in, and this is gunshot wounds, this is car accidents, this is burns, this is pediatric, this is adult. So we are about 1,300 trauma activations a year. And we admit probably another 4,000 people to the trauma center. So that's the numbers we're dealing with. It's 24/7. Sorry, Troy. So why am I here? Well, I started my practice in the town of Red Wing, Minnesota, which is even further south of Minneapolis. Town of 15,000, known for the boots that they make. I was a small town community surgeon, and for about 12 years did just fine, but something stirred, something changed, and I really wanted to teach. So I investigated what it would look like to go move my practice to inner city, and I did, and in 2013 was my first year at Regions. And I'll tell you something, in the first week at Regions Hospital, I transfused more blood than I did in 12 years of my community practice. It took me about a month of these trauma activations to look at my pager and say, it's just another stabbing. It's just another shooting. It was blunting me that quickly. You have to just jump on this hamster wheel and just keep rolling. But what struck me as I started in June, and we have trauma seasons up here. It's kind of when the schools get out and the schools go back in. So May to October, May to September is always our busiest, although now it's always. But I kind of took a breath after that first season, and I kind of thought, what am I getting myself into? This isn't real. And I still live in a town of 15,000. I could drive and leave, but the second trauma season started. And what changed dramatically for me was there were 2 youths involved in shootings, and they were in 2 different hallways of my trauma floor, and it shut the hallways down. The dynamics of that whole situation, the families, it just shut it down. It shut the system down. I remember my charge nurse coming up to me and saying, it's too early. This is March. It's too early for this trauma season. You need to do something about this. And I remember saying, why me? I am like the most opposite. I live in a small town. I'm retiring to be a cattle rancher. I'm a farmer. I was a surgeon for the farmers, and now I'm up here. And she said, because you're standing here, you need to do something. And I went home, and I am a man of faith, and this was a faith journey, but I was praying, and I just said, somebody's got to put something into this. And I turned on the radio, and I heard a man telling his story from Minneapolis. He was a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of VJ's. And his name was John Turnipseed. And John was telling his story of living the life of the largest family gang in the history of Minnesota. In the mid-90s, he ran South Minneapolis. When Minneapolis was called Murderapolis, that was John's family. And he was telling his story about getting out and cleaning up his family and cleaning up his mess. And I thought, I need that guy in my hospital. That's who I need. And I was able to backdoor research him, and I found a media company that was actually writing his book, and I emailed them and said, I'd like to meet with John. I said, I think I need him in the hospital. There's stuff happening to kids that I can't explain. There's families that I can't connect with and stuff, but can we meet for lunch? And it was the next morning. They said, absolutely, John would love to meet. And he and I met in South Minneapolis. And I remember this. We met at a restaurant, and I walked in the door, and it said, Minneapolis Police advises you lock your belongings up in the trunk of your car. And right then I thought, what am I doing in this neighborhood, in this meeting? And this is the craziest thing ever. And then in walked John, a man in a suit. A man who was smiling, a man who was calm, a man who was completely different than what the world would call him. The world would call him a gangbanger and a thug and so on. But this man came in and sat down and listened to what I had to say. And he said, Tom, I get 1,000 requests a year to do something. He said, but I'm going to do this. This is exactly what we should be doing. And that's where John and I started the program of how do we get people in at the point of injury? There's 2 times these young men want to talk. They're either just coming out of the operating room with me, or they're facing a judge and going to jail. And so we designed this program, and we figured we needed to name it. I have 2 programs in my hospital for end of life, in hospice and in palliative care. And I thought, I need a team for life. I need a team for hope. And that's why we picked Life Team, leadership impacting the family environment. And he and I started on this journey of how do we build a structure? How do we bring outside resources into the hospital? And how do we wrap our arms around kids and families and anyone that's hurting, and away it went. And we started collecting successes, and we started writing stories, and we started doing talks, but it was fascinating the roadblocks we'd hit. It was fascinating that our number 1 roadblock was actually pastoral care. John was a reverend, and our pastoral care didn't want him in the building. Wrong team. He can't come in here. Wrong team. He's a gangbanger. So no, he's here to heal. We worked through that. Social work came up. Why is he in here doing our job? This is what we do. He's got these services. And no, we're all on the same team. Wrong team, they kept saying. Wrong team. And we just kept going and doing the work. And ultimately, in the St. Paul area, we formed a coalition that was meeting once a month in our hospital. We had the St. Paul Gang Unit. We had 4 institutions. We had Urban Ventures from Minneapolis. We had Ujamaa Place from St. Paul. We had a West Side representation in Neighborhood House and Catholic Charities. And we could sit in one building with one purpose, talking about a lost youth, an injured youth, a family. And these organizations would raise their hand and say, we can take care of this. And we, with creativity, formed a database. And we started talking and we started moving. And then we started changing one person. And then you change a family. And on it went. And then we hit another roadblock. We had a change in leadership. And it was fascinating with new leadership at my hospital. They shut it all down, said, we're done. We don't want to be known as a gang hospital. And I said, but we're not. We're kind of known as a healing hospital. We're doing something different. No, we don't want to be known as a gang hospital. Then I had attorneys chasing me down and all kinds of stuff. And ultimately, we had to go under the radar. And other organizations changed and so on. Our gang unit changed and so on. But we just kind of sat with this 3-4 year pathway, 5 years, and really started to see a structure of why isn't this stuff working? What is this name in your team stuff? What do you mean, not my team, not my this, not my that? Well, we kind of kept moving along and COVID got us. And as COVID got all of us, but COVID really changed our ability to meet face to face. It changed some of the resources we had and so on. But what was fascinating to me is it changed who I was seeing in the hospital. We had to make a decision in my trauma center. Half of my department had to go to the COVID unit, so to speak, and the other half stayed on the trauma side of it. So I stayed as the trauma surgery side of it. My first 7 trauma activations were not violence related. They were methamphetamine and fentanyl. And so it was a whole different onslaught of drug addiction. My kids in the gangs were kind of tied up and, taken care of, so to speak. This stuff settled down. But what I was seeing then is my kids that we were working with, now you're coming in addicted. And now we're dealing with fentanyl. And then that, as you all know, unraveled. Not only is it fentanyl, but it's zombie drugs and flesh eating this. And I'm like, this is crazy how this world has changed. Give me back the youth violence, because that seemed more manageable than this drug stuff we're dealing with. And as we moved through COVID, there was another change in the system. Some of the violence settled down and so on, but now I'm dealing with suicides. And I'm dealing with what the world calls, the world had labels to different kids. I affectionately call my gang kids, and they call me Dr. Tom. And there were reasons and there was a relationship. And now I got a whole new population of people that are labeled as trans. What does trans mean? And I got people jumping off buildings and sticking guns in their mouths because the world says they're trans. And that was a big part for a year and a half of working through that. And then even in the last year, it's changed again. Now I got kids, I got teenagers, especially middle school girls, killing themselves because the world's telling them they're supposed to be one thing and they can't keep up with this, and so on and so on. And here this went. What I learned through part of this, well, what I learned through all of this was, for me to be anyway successful in this, it was jumping on with my friend John. And John and I at the beginning said, if we're going to make this work, we're going to exchange hats. I'm going to come into your hospital, but you're going to come to my fathering center. Absolutely. And I really spent the first 2 years in South Minneapolis going to John's fathering center. The first night I walked into that fathering center, let me tell you who stuck out. It was me, because no one looked like me. No one talked like me. And I had fears. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I went in and got some food, and John said, just sit right there. And people came up to me, didn't care what I looked like, didn't care why I was there. They knew I was there. I was there for a fathering center, and there was a relationship discussion led by VJ that night. It didn't matter. I was just there because I was hurting, because I needed help, because I needed connection, because I needed community. And that's what they did instantly. And I thought, this is fascinating. What we need is to start developing this community and this connection, and to drop these labels and to drop what the world is calling. And that's really what John and I did. And he and I spent years traveling together and speaking and across the nation about just the stories of these kids and these families and so on. The turning point was 3 years ago. John and I spoke together in North Dakota at the North Dakota State Trauma Conference, and we were telling this story. The request was, could you talk about George Floyd? And could you talk about that? So we designed a talk. It was called The Anatomy and Physiology of Civil Unrest. I gave the anatomy. Here's what I saw. Here's the streets. Here's what happened. And John gave the function, the physiology of what was happening. And it was a really amazing talk that the two of us gave, and the questions were changing. But I said, when we drove home from Fargo that day, I said, John, this whole world is gang warfare. He said, yeah. And I said, John, the two biggest gangs we're dealing with right now in the United States of America are Democrats and Republicans, aren't they? He said, oh yeah. Everyone's defending their turf. Everyone's got the 7 reasons each side is right. And if nobody listens to the other side, then they have a reason to scream louder. And if the screaming doesn't happen, now I can take you out. And heaven forbid any side get a martyr. We had a 7-year battle on the east side of St. Paul. There was a young girl that was killed in a shot in the crossfire. And on the anniversary of her death, every year someone would get shot. There would be a gathering there and someone would drive by and shoot him. We knew at the trauma center it's coming in, and every year it came in. And it was justified. It was justified because they shot one of ours. We're going to shoot one of them. It's fascinating the justifications we're seeing in this whole system right now. Well, after that talk, 6 weeks later, John died. Passed away. That was the last time he and I spoke together. And so it's been 3 years. And I've taken the last 3 years and I sat down and said, what's going on in this world, and how different or how common are we? I have worked with gangbangers, with addicts, with troubled youth, with trans, with whatever the world seems to want to call people. But you know what's in common is just pain, and it's fear, and it's isolation. And I took the last 2.5 years and sat down. I had a group of men appointed in the small town I live in. I work with the Goodhue County Treatment Court, and they have about 8 guys, and said, these guys aren't making it. Can you sit down with them and can you just work with them about life? I said, absolutely. So we met every Wednesday night. I had a buddy of mine that said, every night you meet, I'll give you pizza. So we ordered pizza every night, and we sat down and said, I want to chew apart what I've been working on in this hospital. I want to bring it down to you guys, and I want to figure out what this grid is, what this solution is to all this separation. And there was a gentleman, Jamie Winship, who some of you may know. Jamie really solidified this a couple of years ago about identity work and true identity and so on. But we worked through this grid of, either you're connected or you're separate. Either you're self-promoting and self-protecting or you're serving. Either you're afraid of someone or you love them. And it's this whole opposite stuff. But the amount of the world that sits in this separation model, this self-promote, this self-protect, this name in the team, this my side stuff. In the 2.5 years, I had 8 guys from a treatment court flush out a system that says, there's a way to do this. There's a way to fix this. We may have done it in the hospital, and that's a setting where you can do it. But the reality is what I learned in this whole journey is if you can't love someone, then you're afraid of them. They're not human. If you can't serve somebody, you're going to punish them. And that's what the message is that we're starting to bring forward. How do you get out of this mess? You can't, it's love or fear. That's what drives the brain. And if you don't have a foundation of forgiveness, nothing's going to change. And if you can't serve people, nothing's going to change. And that's where we sit. I have not done a talk since John and I spoke in North Dakota. It's fascinating that VJ called me. VJ, the first day I walked into that fathering center, I went into a talk that was being given about relationships, and it was VJ. And that's where I first met him. And out of the blue, moving through the system, VJ calls and says, "Will you do this talk?" I said, "Absolutely, absolutely, VJ. If my piece of the puzzle is pulling them out of the fire, but if there's a grid here that we can start promoting and stuff, there's a way out of this. It's these small islands." Reverend Oliver, you said it. It's these small islands of creativity that are going to change this, that are going to completely transform what's happening here. And so I want to just give Dr. Troy a few minutes just to fill in some of the color to this talk, and then I'm happy to, we'll take questions and whatever, if that's okay.
Yeah, I just like to edify a little bit of what Dr. Blee is talking about. In my world, we deal with trauma and wounds in a different way. Dr. Blee is the emergency area. We're always looking at proactively what can we do to prevent these big problems, and then just become the healthiest versions of ourselves. And so it's a lot of creativity and it's a lot of problem solving. But what we ran into is that the majority of people are wounded and they're operating out of their wounds. So years ago, I was given a patient from Iraq, and he had PTSD and was frozen stiff. He had been locked in that state for 2 years. And when I don't know what to do with a patient, I pray. So that's just good guidance. If you don't know what to do, stop and pray. That's just that's the medical counsel for the wisdom for the day. And so that's what I did. And it was the very, very first time I ever heard God speak to me directly and told me kind of what to do. And I did it. I was obedient. And miraculously, this soldier that had not moved in 2 years got up and started walking. And we're able to kind of watch a miracle right in front of us. And that only lasted a couple hours, and then he was right back into his old state again. And so the U.S. Army that flew him here brought him back to my clinic. He was from South Dakota, and we started working with him. And God kind of revealed a process of how his wounds came about. He was in the war. He had run into a tent and knocked himself unconscious, got a concussion, found out that his newborn baby son back home may not make it through the night. So that physical trauma combined with the emotional trauma was enough for him to wake up the next morning frozen stiff, unable to walk. Well, we ended up doing some clinical studies and found out that we're all walking around with this mild form of PTSD. We're all walking around with unaddressed wounds, and it impacts our decision making, and it impacts our ability to actually be servant leaders in life, like Dr. Blee is talking about. So when we become very emotional, very reactive, it's very destructive, just in general. And it's a lot of times because we're operating out of the wounds. The next level beyond that emotional reactivity is logic. So a lot of times you can get to a certain place where it's logic and logical, and there's solutions there, but that's also very, very temporary. In the body, for us to look at how you're doing, your overall well-being, we look at how well your systems are communicating. A breakdown in communication leads to dysfunction. Dysfunction leads to disease. It's no different when we're talking about our communities. So in the body, from cell to cell, if we lose that communication, cancer starts, disease starts. Same thing with our environment and our community. So we have to restore communication. Now, the third level of overcoming obstacles and wounds is more of a divine intervention. When God is involved and put in the middle, we see an eternity. We see a permanent solution. That's part of it. Dr. Blee and I were talking before this just about some of the things going on and how creative Jesus was. And I woke up early on Sunday and I wrote down pages of information, but I feel like we're in a very, very particular time where it's the Sermon on the Mount type of time that we're in, and a lot of wisdom. There's so much wisdom. I encourage people to go back to go back to Matthew and read through that right now, because look how much applies to that right now. And we can use creative solutions. There was trap after trap that was being set by the Pharisees on Jesus, and he wouldn't bite, so he wouldn't get into that blame game that Dr. Blee is talking about one side versus the other. It doesn't matter. Everyone collects evidence to be right, and so they fight to be right. And what Jesus did is he found a creative solution, and it was so awe-inspiring that people followed him. And that's the season we're in right now. When we have good restorative communication with people whose brains are as big as their hearts, and they actually start communicating, you will get into problem solving. This is why we tend to, in the proactive functional medicine model, we look at, break down that communication. What can we do to restore that? We definitely look at root causes. What set this up? But a lot of times we have to be aware of the root cause while actually bringing something else in as part of the fix. So to get to the root cause scenarios, it's good to talk about it. I just had this conversation with my son because a lot of stuff that's happening in Minneapolis right now is on his block. He lives right there. And we talked about how talking about root cause is great, but we're kind of in an emergency situation. So for example, if you have taken a bullet, I'm going to highly recommend you see Dr. Blee versus myself. I tell my patients all the time, if you see me with the scalpel, it's time to run, right? I'm proactive. I'm going to help you with diet, lifestyle, sleep, all the things to prevent disease and disorder. That's the next phase of what needs to happen in our communities. But it starts with individual communication, just like one cell in the body to the other cell in the body. And then you build from that and you build off of that. And once trust is actually earned and people start respecting each other, you'll see a different side where people aren't operating out of wounds. They're not operating out of fear. The majority of decisions that have led to us being here when it comes to the root cause is because those decisions are being made out of fear. End of story. And so I am extremely optimistic at the future we have simply because of how chaotic it is and conversations like this that are happening. So I know we are blessed to be in this time. We were all born for this time. We were all made for this season. And so I know if Dr. Blee and I, which are opposing sides of healthcare, can come together and have people come into agreement, not only that, actually be a part of it, I know the same thing can happen for our communities, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or whatever. That community can come together, and when they see people actually working and operating that come from different backgrounds and they're partnering up, just like Dr. Blee and just like everyone here. And sorry, who are you working with?
John.
Oh yeah, John. Yeah, John. That's a game changer when people can see that community coming together with solutions versus problems, just pointing at the problem. One of the things I tell my patients who come in and they're constantly looking at what they've been diagnosed with, like Dr. Blee is talking about, their diagnosis is a false identity. That's not how God made you. You are not MS. And so MS or identifying yourself by your disease is the same as a bug just hitting your windshield and you're constantly focused on that bug. You're going to crash and burn. And so it's very important to acknowledge that there's a problem, but what are you going to do to get around that problem? So it's very, very good time for these conversations. And like I said, I'm Dr. Tom's sidekick here, so I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I'll let him answer questions. And his story and his past and his impact is absolutely astounding, and we need more of it across the country.
Thank you very much. What a dynamic duo, I'll put it that way. Yeah, you're complementing each other, and that's the problem. We don't realize that if we you said we gather information for more divisiveness, but if we gather information to find a solution, then we find that we actually complement each other. You know, and I think the Democrats and the Republicans, although actually they complement each other. As you had said so eloquently, Dr. Blee, was that when you went in, see, color went out the window. The whole human heart that transcends color and race was the most important thing in that matter. The human healing And I think this is what we all have come to conclude is that are we always willing to find the problem, or are we willing to find the healing process? And the healing process means that we have to sacrifice our feelings, our thoughts, our preconceived ideas of one another, and move forward. So I'm so happy to hear VJ. They're already on the list for the conference.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Because
Wonderful.
this is I'm just the loss for words, but this is what I like to hear. You know, actually, when I began this program, and especially those communities, Dr. Blee, that you were sharing, and I've had experience with the aspect of love. Everybody is looking for love, and everybody is reacting because of lack of love. Sometimes it gets worse, you know, their behavior gets more accelerated and worse. But when you boil it down, it's a lack of love. And so when you pray, Dr. Troy, for that moment, you know, that it was a book that when I was in college, I was getting ready to go to college, and a good friend of mine, she knew I was, so she gave me a book to read, you know, and I read it was called Not Made of Love, Not Made of Wood. And it was about a schizophrenic who was chronic schizophrenic. And the doctor took him off with all those electoral things, all those things, took him off it and decided to invest in loving this person as a human being, as like his son, constantly, 24 hours. And that guy, you know, emerged and became a viable citizen in the community, was able to get his own apartment. That stuck with me, and that reminded me of the soldier, you know, but there's a part where he relapsed, but he had to come back, like you had said. So that reminded me of that. So we're very happy to hear your story. It's profound. It has so much validity to it. And we have some people who have their hands up. I know they're ready to share. So, and then afterwards, feel free to answer them and to, you know, make some more comments in the areas that we're discussing. Reverend Franklin, welcome to the platform.
Thank you so much, Reverend Oliver. God bless you all. And also, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. VJ Smith for inviting Dr. Troy and Dr. Bree to this platform. Dr. Bree and Dr. Troy, this is amazing. God bless you for what you are doing and what you are taking on, and your ability to be still in that moment, to be able to come to that humble perspective of acknowledging authentically God's guidance, so that you would be able to discern the identification of the root cause of all of these things that are happening, and your ability to be able to do that and to constantly reinvent yourself and fight through all of those stories, those creative stories that are the root cause of dividing us from making that difference. Oh, that's not my hat, or that's not my thing, or what was it, or this, I guess you can say, these change of hats, these labelings, it's all the same thing.
Yep.
I mean, everybody has a trauma. They call themselves these labels as I believe, a psychological mechanism for survival.
Yep.
And you both, you know what you're doing. You're glorifying God. You're showing to the communist world, you're showing to the whole world the reality of what God's people can do in a free society.
Yep.
And so I just want to commend you for that, for making this collaboration. This is very passionate to me because we have an autistic son, and we have a lot of stories behind that too. but I want to thank you so much for your commitment to bring a real solution and getting to the point where this will expand the practice of functional medicine. And so it's a lot I can say, but again, it reminds me, of back in the day. There used to be, musicians in the 70s and earlier, right? And they used to collaborate, or the 80s. They used to get together, and magic happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you follow me, and this is what you're doing. God is working through you to master the ability to reinvent and bring about the healing potential of human interaction. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We hope to make a joyful noise. That's about as much as our musical part, but
Yeah, so thank you so much, Reverend Franklin, for that. There's so
Can
much.
I add something?
Yeah, good. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Please.
thank you very much. This is pretty amazing. I just want to share some backdrop to when the doctor came to our support group. We were doing 100 fathers a week, and we were the biggest and the largest fathering support group in the nation. The federal government was amazed that we could do that many fathers in a week. They came down and they paid us. They paid us to reject fathers. And we tried to figure out a way to turn that down, me and John, because we didn't want to do that. But we understood the reason why, because what was happening in that community there, crime was going down, fathers were going back to their families, people were getting jobs and getting training, and the prison system was losing the market. The funeral homes were losing their market. The pharmaceutical companies were losing their market. And everybody was losing that needed to be losing, but that's not what they wanted. So they eventually defunded that program because it was way too successful after dissecting it for 3 years and trying to get us to turn people away. We would have to do a backdoor deal with everybody. We said we can't turn them away, but we'll act like we did. So the government came in. That's what they did to that program, and they defunded it after we thought maybe after they seen how powerful we were, that they would continue to fund it, but that didn't happen. And so fathering groups all across the nation have never been as powerful because they know that we know what to do with these men if we transfer their lives and turn them around, get them out of treatment, get them in treatment and out of treatment, back into jobs, and so on and so forth, and work with people like the good doctor to help turn lives around. So always up against the system, always barriers there when it comes to our men of color and trying to transform their lives. And I want to thank him for putting that resistance up, because while he was working in St. Paul, I was working with the hospitals in Hennepin County, running upon the same issues and doing the same things and they had me on call, but they never called me. So when somebody come and shot, I wouldn't get the call. I had to go based on what the community gave me. And so they played that game with me, but it's amazing that we have the answers. I guess my thought is we have the answers, but the system has got to let go and let us do what we need to do to save our community. So I thank you guys. Thank you so very much. And hopefully in the future, we can continue to break barriers and save lives.
Amen.
amen.
Thanks, Pete.
Amen. Amen. So thank
Can I
you.
make
so much.
one quick comment on that?
Sure.
Because I do believe that we're entering a season that God is working, creating a path for those systems to be broken. So for me, in functional medicine, I ran up against the same resistance for decades, including naively early in my career was able to help an individual that was the mystery illness patient of the month on the news. And I submitted everything to Mayo thinking that they would love my strategy, and ended up being rejected and was told to mind my credentials, and everything got shut down. And that's when I realized it wasn't truly about getting everyone better. And so that same system, those barriers have broken down. So I pray, VJ, that the exact same thing happens with the system that's blocking exactly what you're talking about to come to fruition. And I do believe we're in a season where we're seeing God work to create a path for the people to be able to start to implement, because you're 100% right. We know what to do. We've got to be allowed to do it.
Absolutely.
Man.
And that's what,
Thank you, sir.
thank you so much. That's profoundly said. Thank you, VJ. And you're correct. This is what we have learned. And that's why we named our organization Stopping the Violence Best Practices Task Force. You know, so we become a force that brings people like yourself who has answers and solutions. God has always given us answers and solutions. It's always been there, you know. So how do we, like you said, this is a season, change will come.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely the season. And we just have to make the conditions to be a catalyst for that change. Never give up, never look back, and keep going. Thank you so much. Anyone, Donna, why don't you welcome? Haven't seen you in a while. Welcome to the platform. I've seen you. I see you wrote a couple things in there, but please explain yourself.
Hi, I'm Donna Avey. I'm in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm active with the American Clergy Leadership Conference and also with Alaskan Women in Ministry, also with networks that are praying. I'm helping mobilize an All Zips prayer network here for Alaska. The purpose is to facilitate that catalyst mechanism that God wants us to work right now. And I really am praying for what you're talking about. There's a magic to the oneness that can come through what you're talking about. And yet my son works with the South Central Foundation. You may or may not appreciate my talking about him right now behind his back. He's a National Institute of Health researcher, and now he's doing statistics. He's not doing the active research these days. But he went the scientific approach, and we have dialogue constantly over some of these things. How to help the scientific world accept the reality of the spiritual aspect, and how to support the person really requires the spiritual element. And yet, as pastors, I feel we're not able to connect quite yet. Recently, I was asked to write a little message about that. I call it the miracle of oneness. I got it done this week. We can find a way to bring this connection in this time in a unique way. And I'm grateful for your testimony about that and your experiences with it, how to bring it forward so it's more publicly understood. Have you been supported in that effort?
Yeah, I can take this one. I'm in a hospital that does not allow praying, so to speak. I have residents, and I teach residents and medical students, and they are so confused. They want something, they're looking for something, they're desiring something. And the solution is show them, don't tell them. I don't need to feed everyone a Christ sandwich. I need to do something different enough that they ask me why I'm different. That's the service, and that's what I do. My residents, now we meet most Saturdays in some way, shape, or form. We're meeting and we're talking about connection and separation and true identity and false identity. And it comes down to, they're like, well, how do you know this stuff? And I'll say, because I studied the one man that did it perfectly. There's one man that has no internal conflict. There's one man that has the best cholesterol, the best blood pressure, the best everything, and his name is Jesus. That's who you want to study. I don't need you to believe right now that Son of God, Savior, or anything. I just need you to study him. And they follow me because I show them. I meet with young men. I get calls from jails, and I'll go in and FaceTime with jail, and they'll say, I can't do anything right now, Doc. I'm like, yes, you can. Pick up garbage.
Yep.
Why? Because you're doing something for someone. Get out of your self-protection, self-promotion, bend over for somebody, and they never have to know that you did it, but you're doing something. That's what Christ would do. So it is. I don't, in a hospital that doesn't allow prayer, I went through this identity work that I took 8 drug addicts through. The world calls drug addicts, right? Took 25 people through it at the hospital. I have a silent prayer team right now. I have a text message, Regions Hospital prayer team. I text and go, hey, this room needs a little prayer. And they just show up and they do it. it's the island of creativity that'll do it, but it's the same sense. Don't worry about telling them who Christ is. Just show them. They'll ask you. They will ask you.
And that seems to be the message I've been getting too. Here in Alaska, a lot of people receive kind of one person said downloads. There's a lot of prophecy around how important that is. Recognizing each person that understands what you're telling me is your understanding, doing it. And then we connect to each other who are also doing it.
Yep.
And if we do that it intensifies that energy that takes us to the next level, that quantum energy that is the age we're in right now.
Yeah, my job is to tell my story, my witness. I don't have to tell I don't know anything about apologetics and theology and all that. I can tell you how Christ met me. It's just my job. And the person in front of me, I guess you're in front of me because you're supposed to hear that. Now I'm not responsible for what happens next, but if you have any other questions, here's my cell phone. And they call back, right? That's my piece of the puzzle. You know,
I'd also say too, where two or more gather, that's where we're going to see the miracles of Christ. And so that includes here, even though we're not in the same city. And I heard a very, very great quote years ago. It was Danny Johnson, a Christian entrepreneur. And she said, man's definition of unity is do it my way and we'll get along. And God's definition of unity is diversity and harmony. Everyone has a gift. You recognize their gift, you lift them up in that gift, and then watch what God does. And so for me to actually look in and work with people, I'm going to dig into who are you, your real identity, and what's your gift. And you'll be shocked to me. People say, I don't have a gift. I'm like, yes, you do. I said, let's go. You ever play hide and seek? Let's go in and let's start looking for your gift. It's there. When we identify that gift and they know what to say yes to and what to say no to, the real God-given, yes, it just unstoppable. Yeah. Now you've got a patriot for Christ that just is on fire doing what they do. And many times it's not even close to what you're good at. And so you know who to call when you need someone to talk to someone because of their gift.
Yes, thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone. We have Wayne Hankins. Welcome to the platform, Wayne.
Oh, always a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed your comments, Dr. Tom. You have said that this is now the season where God is going to come in and he's going to dismantle the fallen society that we have. And I believe that's true. I'm seeing it firsthand. In our Constitution, which I love our Constitution, where it says, we the people, we are going to disband ourselves from England due to natural laws and the God of those laws. We have a right to do that. And they did it. And those laws, those natural laws, we have ignored for going on 70 years, incrementally, little by little, every year, a compromise. We've taken God and Jesus out of our schools, our universities, our institutions, our society, our family, and even out of our own individual minds and filled it up with daily things that where God is, there's no room for God to even speak to us, for many of us. And I saw this firsthand when I went to a school board meeting in Livermore, and they could not decide to uphold Title IX, not allowing men into women's sports. And we have now men who simply believe they're women demanding to go to women's sports. You have men believing that they're women wanting to go to women's bathrooms, women's lockers, women's showers, and men believing that they're women and they're doing chemical and surgical procedures to give the external look of being a woman. And these are violations of the natural law. And it can only go on for a certain amount of time before we reach a breaking point. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And you being in Minneapolis, St. Paul, my God, you're seeing it. You're really seeing it.
Yeah.
With what's happening up there. But when we simply pick up a Bible or simply start seriously talking to God, praying, reading his word, that is the barrier where these voices that are telling us to be a certain thing, act a certain way, they're blocked. Something as simple as that blocks the spiritual problems that we're having. And I think what we're seeing is an enormous spiritual problem coming down on all of us, telling us to do, to think, and behave certain ways. And we know in our conscience it's wrong. So this spiritual assault that we're all facing, it's real. And I'd like to hear your comments on that about, does that fit into your thinking, the spiritual assault upon all of us, particularly the LGBTQ community?
You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, yep. Okay, couple things. Number one, we don't need a political change, so to speak. We need a spiritual change, right? This is a heart change that needs to happen in this nation. When I went down to the oath that I took as a physician, it says mind, body, and spirit. We work on the body too much. If you go directly to LGBTQ, if you want to look at the false identity of a person, read their admit note to the hospital. It will tell you everything that they're not. 65-year-old Parkinsonian, congestive heart failure, fall down, broken hip. 22-year-old drug addict, gangbanger, gunshot wound, blah, blah, blah. It's this list of, yeah, that's what the world says you are. 22-year-old male transitions to female, suicide attempt, 6th time, blah, 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 right? That's what the world says. If you go into what the formula is, you never talk to that person as a person. You only address their symptoms. You're suicidal, you need this team. You're talking about how you want to be addressed, we'll call you this name. The formula just says, how's your pain? What's going on? And these people never heal. And by these people, I mean the people in my hospital, the Parkinsonian to the LGBT, whatever they're calling them, they don't heal. The generative, you have to generate something new. And I do this with my residents. I don't care what their pain score is. I want to know their favorite dog. I want you to walk in and ask them their favorite dog. Everyone on rounds today, I want to hear 15 different favorite dogs. I want you to know who they are. Getting into somebody who's labeled, I had this 2 months ago, it was the 6th suicide attempt with a young man who goes as a woman, but he is so hurt, he is so broken, like Reverend Olive, he's so unloved. I want to change who I am. I am so uncomfortable. I can't be me, and I can't, then I'm going to kill myself. I sat down with that person and just said, I got to have one thing you're passionate about, one thing, just give it to me. Science fiction, great. What about science fiction? I don't know what it came down to, loves Legos. You should see how many Legos change the dynamics of the room to get that person into a value structure, a creative structure. That is going to the core. The symptoms go away. This gentleman progresses through this stuff, hospital stay 6, and it becomes a gentleman. Guns disappear when you get down to the core issue and value and love. It's that's where I sit on this. Give me your list of who the world says you are, because I know kind of where I'm at, but I'm going to throw that list away really fast because I'm going to get down to how you need to be healed, if that, Wayne, answers what you're saying.
I'd also like to just comment on the fact that all of those LGBTQ, people who identify themselves by their disease, MS, like I said before, these are all false identities. So the answer to one is the same for the other. So LGBTQ is just the same example in a much more interface scenario. And as the Bible is very clear that our battle is not with flesh and blood, it's a spiritual battle. And so we have to fight it in the spirit first, and we have to take it to that spiritual realm. And then what Dr. Blee is talking about is the art of how we actually meet them where they're at, like Jesus would have back in his day. And that's where we kind of expand through it. So as we first approach them with that love and that we're here to help first, it doesn't matter if it's LGBTQ or someone who's just identifying themselves by their disease. It's the same process. And you, just like the patient I had, you have to bring it to the spiritual realm. And I do think there's a lot of things happening right now. We're seeing just a breakout when it comes to deliverance ministries and other spiritual types of things where people are having breakthroughs with that. And so I've been privy to some of those things where I'm working on the flesh side of things while watching these prayer sessions occur and different things. And we've seen miracles in the last 4 years because of that. People set free from the bondage of these false identities, whether it be LGBTQ or even other things like I'm not worthy. Or even like Dr. Blee or myself, Dr. Troy, those are false identities. Democrat, Republican, those are false identities. That's not our God-given identity. Our true identity is very, very different. And it's the same for whatever community you're talking about.
Right. Roles we play are not our identity.
Right.
That's true. Okay, we're coming to end. So this is how we're
Okay,
let's have a comment.
EJ.
Comment from, Reverend Reed, and then I'd like to get a short comment from Reverend Levi Darty, and then I would like you,
EJ,
your last words. We would like to hear from you again.
EJ.
So Reverend Reed, show yourself.
EJ, if you could stop it right there.
Greetings, everyone. I'm a little bit indisposed right now. I've had a very long day with this weather here in Washington, D.C. I am working in Las Vegas, and now I'm asking myself, why did I leave Las Vegas? But
yeah, I just
I'm sorry about the video, but I am really inspired by your testimonies. I identify you as gentlemen who are walking into your calling, and by doing that, we find that God has a greater vision of what we can do than any vision or plan that we have for ourselves.
Yeah.
So I just see your victory in being able to walk into your calling, and it's something that, you know, as you witnessed, the people around you couldn't see it. They couldn't understand it maybe. But thank you so much, Dr. Blee, for remaining true to your calling. And if we could just apply these kinds of principles to the world, I'm so glad to hear how you help us realize that we all are wounded and in need of healing. And it takes us coming together to help one another.
Yep, community, you bet.
Yes. So I feel as if you're practicing the words that Jesus tried to help us to understand. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you at this conference that Reverend Oliver is hinting to that he's planning. We're looking forward to meeting you and sharing with you and fellowshipping with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Reed.
Okay, I was trying to get a few comments before we leave.
Just one word or two. Unmute yourself.
I came in late. I was engaged in another conversation, a program with Dr. Professor Combs, Andy Combs. And I'm sorry, I'm not worthy to say anything because I don't know, just a snippet, a little bit of what you said. I'm just grateful to be here and grateful to see men of God who's working hard behind the scenes and keeping everything going. You're like the stitch in the fabric. The fabric is blowing in the wind unless it's stitched up and to be used for good. So thank you for being there.
Thank you so much.
Somehow EJ is having a problem. I wanted to get a couple comments before we
quite profound.
depart
You would,
and close, but it seems like you can't stop.
Said, and if you probably heard the whole part, you can probably resonate with it 1000%. So thank you so much for coming on. And I'd just like to say, my conclusion is thank you all. Thank you for coming on. I'm gonna ask you guys to say your few words, but I'm with Reverend Reed in this, and it's true. We are, no matter how small or big our trauma is, many times, even in longevity, we still make decisions based on that trauma unconsciously. You know what I mean? And it takes sometimes what you have been doing and probably others to help raise them out of that quagmire, to really recognize it and then stop walking and making decisions from those particular traumas that sometimes we hide them. We don't want
Yeah,
to.
Oh, yeah.
Very good at that.
Yeah, I hide the trauma. So also, Dr. Blee, as Reverend Reed said, you're walking into your calling. So now you know why you came from 15,000 small town and something said to go up to. So
Right.
God called you. He said, you have anointing that I need to use.
Yeah.
Come out of there. And I'm
Yep.
gonna take you to play with the Blick boys. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean?
Oh, you're right. Yep.
And then Dr. Troy, thank you so much for being a medical doctor as well, with such internal spiritual insight and wisdom. And it's very profound, and we're so blessed to have you. So I just to open the floor for both of you, whoever wants to start first, to give us your last words.
I just want to thank you for the time. I pray, I just pray for all of you, and I pray for continued conversations like this, because I am optimistic at our future, even though things are chaotic right now. So I just appreciate you all, and I can tell this is a very godly group of men and women that are aligned with intention. So I'm just, it warms my heart and serves me to actually just be a part of a community like this across the nation. So yeah, thank you all for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yep, and I'll give my thanks. For 3.5 years, it's almost like the Lord has been somewhat silent. I lost my best friend, John. I lost my best friend who didn't look like me, who didn't talk like me, who didn't grow up like me. The hardest talk I ever gave, and the last talk I gave before this, was at his funeral. So this is really God ordained, God inspired, and I thank all of you for listening and taking the time. I needed this. I needed this more than the battle against the Democrats and Republicans. And so when VJ called, you're darn right, whatever you need, VJ. And I'll close by saying, you guys are an amazing group. Appreciate the time. And our hands are up. If we can do something to help or add our piece of the puzzle, you let us know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you again. You guys are just incredible. When God is in presence when tears come to your heart, and here we are. And I want to thank my close buddy, my brother, VJ. And again, I'd like to close with, this is why people like yourself are the, if you will, progenitors, what motivated us to come. God has showed me to say, there is a best practices out there. I'm calling you and commissioning you to be a task force, bring them together. You see, because they can get us one or two, but if we come together as a collective body, they can't break us. You see, and then the national impact can come on. So God bless you. Thank you so much for coming on, and we look forward to continued collaboration.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all.
God bless.
Thank you. We'll see you at the conference.
God bless you.
You better let us know.
All right. All right. Thank you, VJ. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, VJ.
Thank you. All right.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, that was great.
Thank you all.
Well, everyone, thank you for staying on.
Somewhere they're at.
Want to see you next week. I have to go. I wanted to get some comments, but God bless you. We'll see you next week.
Good to see you, Reverend Reed.
And thank you, Reverend Oliver. It was no problem. That was an incredible program.
That's why I wanted to get the recording again, because it was such a great program.
Right.
It's so many nuggets in that, man. So many nuggets in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Spirit.
God bless. We'll see everybody next week.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
We will do it.
Without question. Without question.
Okay. Take care, John.
We're freaking out right now because his time is up.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Time has come.
That's right. That's right. He's been exposed.
God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.